or you fight. What is causing that is the need for survival. Okay? So, and at that particular point in time, anybody that is thought of as being one of the perpetrators could easily be lynched because everybody is angry at what is going on. And that will mean another escape, because if you don't get us first, we'll get you. Okay? So that is the situation as it is. Becomes very, very serious that a lot of mindset of people will be geared towards escaping or fighting for their life. And that's exactly why you see things going on that way.
Now, finally, Doctor, as you know, the war against insurgency is still on. But in the meantime, while that's going on, how can one strike a good balance between being security conscious, being paranoid, and being human? And unfortunately, he wasn't able to answer that question, but hopefully we'll try to get him back. And in the meantime, we're looking at another security issue, but this is in Somalia. Now, a source from the United States government has revealed that a former Washington area taxi driver who is on the FBI's most wanted terrorist list has been detained and is in the custody of the Somali government. That's his face right now on the screen. And the FBI said in January that it added Somali-born U.S. citizen Liban Haji Mohammed, who's 29 years old, to its watch list because he allegedly provided support to the Somalia-based Islamist militant group Al-Shabaab. The U.S. source also confirmed that Mohammed was arrested several days ago by Somali authorities and was now in Somali custody, but it was not clear if or when he would be sent back to the United States. The Washington Post first reported on Monday that Mohammed had been detained in Somalia, and now we have reports that he lived in the northern Virginia suburbs near Washington and drove a taxi for a living. He left the United States in 2012 and was said at the time to be an associate of Zachary Chesa. That's an American who pleaded guilty in 2010 to threatening the writers of the television show South Park. Now, fortunately, a spokesman for forces protecting energy infrastructure has confirmed that Islamist militants successfully shelled Libya's Bahi and Marbouk oil fields late yesterday, damaging a pipeline to the Esidra oil port. Militants claiming loyalty to Islamic State have been blamed for attacks last month on an oil field and pipeline in Libya, where two rival governments are battling for control. He said it was still difficult to assess damage and fighting was continuing. Hassi also said that oil security forces were confronting militants at a third oil field, that's Al Daraa. 4 years after the fall of Muammar Gaddafi, Libya is in chaos with two rival governments and their armed forces battling for control of the sprawling North African state and its oil wealth. Oil infrastructure has increasingly been at the heart of their struggle, closing two major export terminals and cutting the OPEC member state exports. But Islamist militants have been gaining ground in the turmoil. We'll take a break now again on Network Africa. When we come back, the Libya parliament agrees to return for talks. Details in a moment. Please stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching Network Africa on Channels Television. Now, Libya's elected parliament agreed to return to UN-sponsored peace negotiations 1 week after pulling out, and a delegate from its rival assembly said the talks would resume this week. That's on Thursday specifically. Western powers see the UN talks as the only chance to end turmoil in Libya, where a power struggle between two rival governments and their armed factions risks pushing the North African country deeper into civil war 4 years after the fall of Muammar Gaddafi. News of Parliament's move came just after Islamist militants shelled two Libyan oil fields. Forces loyal to Prime Minister Abdullah al-Thani's internationally recognized government and the elected parliament based in the east are battling Libya-Dawn forces who took over the capital Tripoli last summer and set up their own government. The elected House of Representatives quit the UN talks last week after a double suicide bombing attack on an eastern town killed 45 people. Salah Makhzoom, that's a deputy for the rival parliament, which is known as the GNC, a former assembly reinstated by Tripoli's forces, said the talks would resume on Thursday in Morocco, but the United Nations has not confirmed that statement just yet. Now, just what we've been doing today is looking at security in different dimensions in terms of those who've been displaced, what's happened lately in the country, as well as the psychological impact, especially those who are living in the hardest hit areas. We were speaking initially to a clinical psychologist, that's Dr. Charles Umeh, before we lost him. Now I understand we've been able to reconnect with him. Doctor, thank you so much for staying on the line.
Thank you very much.
Now, finally, I was trying to ask you before we lost you, how we can strike a balance, a good balance between being security conscious, being paranoid, and being humane while the war against insurgency goes on.
Now, war or insurgency situation is like an emergency that will require emergency prompt action to remedy some of the effects, especially the psychological effects of these things. We talked about people becoming very irritable, especially at the sight of anybody that is suspected to be a bomber or this or that. You see, the group think predisposes them to react without thinking and just get the person off. Now, with that kind of mindset, you are trying to say, how do these people still function and be able to cope with this kind of situation? It is mind-boggling anyway, but in such a situation, there is going to be what? A kind of desensitization or psychological first aid. So psychological first aid comes in form of trying to bring people to terms with what is going on and trying to make them feel comfortable, at least with themselves, okay? In the sight of all these killings, burning, and what have you. But, it's a bit difficult, but there are ways it is done so that the person will be at peace with himself, so they will not be very jumpy, they will not be on edge all the time. And then there should be concerted effort from the authorities to assure the people that, the situation is under control, so that they won't live in perpetual fear, because living in perpetual fear triggers off another square of psychological situations that might be out of place. So a lot of information, desensitization is needed so that we will come to terms with exactly what is happening. Because if the devil you know is better than the saint you don't know. So if you let them understand that this is the nature of the situation in their territory, then they can prepare their mind to cope with those exigencies without adding more problems to the existing problem.
Dr. Charles Umeh, thank you so much again for being a part of the program. We appreciate your time and your input. Thank you very much. Well, that's it on Network Africa. Many thanks for watching. I'm Cynthia Are.